Dr. Joel Bischoff here. Welcome back to the Maker Bus. Today I'm going to show you a quick tutorial on how to build your birdhouse out of the recycled materials that you may be finding around your house. So we're going to need a couple of things to get this started. We're going to need some sort of a container. I think the cartons like this one are the best, the ones that even if they have like a cap at the top of that, but the cartons that are made of paper, they'll probably work the best. Now, if you can't find one of them, the other thing that's really easily available is the half-gallon container-sized plastic jug, and with the lid on top, that's perfectly fine as well. The biggest thing, though, is that it needs to have flat sides to it, okay? What we're gonna do requires us to glue something in place with flat sides. Both of these containers have really nice flat sides to them. A container like this lemonade container here does not have flat edges. If you look at the side of it, it's rounded this way and it's also kind of rounded this way. And that's the same on these parts with the labels too. They're both kind of have a little bit of a round shape to it. And that's not going to work for what we have to do for our birdhouse. So what I want you to do is try and find one of those containers that's got nice flat sides to it. Again, I think the cartons would work the best, but it's not required. You can also do the plastic jug. So we're going to work with the carton to begin with for this example. And basically there's a couple of things that you're going to do. We're going to cut a hole in this, and then we are going to remove that piece, and we're going to put a laser cut piece in its place. So what we're going to do is cut a hole that this can fit inside of, and then we are going to glue this into this container so that it stays in place, and that's going to provide us with the perfect size hole for the specific kind of bird that is best for your location. Now, because I'm talking about that, I want to mention that I have two different sizes here. First one is the Eastern bluebird size, and you can see that that hole is a little bit larger. And then I have another sized hole that's a lot smaller. That one is for the Carolina chickadee and the Carolina wren. All of these birds are native to our area, and we want to choose the birdhouse that's best for your house specifically. So when you put this outside, you actually are attracting the right kind of birds. So the biggest thing is that everyone that is going to use the Eastern bluebird, they really need to have quite a large backyard. So this is going to be most of the kids that are in the Clay Elementary School. You guys are probably going to be using the Eastern bluebird most. The other schools, most of Akron, almost all of Highland, and almost all of Fulton, you guys are going to have the birds that are the Eastern, or the Carolina chickadee and the Carolina wren, because that's the bird that we want to try and attract in a little bit more of a city environment. So there's not as much room for the birds to spread out, and that's why the Eastern bluebird hole, the size of the opening, would actually attract birds that we don't want to nest in these boxes. So we want to put the right sized hole for the right birdhouse in the right location. So that's why we're going to base it off of what your house actually looks like. And again, I think most kids in Clay are going to have the bigger backyards, the more expansive areas. And then the other three buildings, most of you are going to have a little bit more of the smaller environments where these birds are more likely to set up. So now that we got that talked about, let's actually go ahead and start building this thing. So we're going to take this container and we're going to use a template for birdhouse opening. So I'm going to provide your teacher with a bunch of these. And this is just a little plastic thing that you can place on your container. Now, it doesn't really matter where it goes. It should be up a little bit higher though. The birds are going to want to come in and then have a little bit of an area down at the bottom where they can actually build their nest. So it should be halfway or higher. It should not be down here at the bottom. So I'm just going to roughly center this, and I'm going to use a marker to go ahead and trace around the outside of this. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect, and it doesn't have to stay on for long. This is a permanent marker, and you can even see that it is not staying on my container really well, but it's on there enough that we can get a cut on there. So what we're going to do is use some scissors to cut this out. Now, all of these containers, both the plastic jugs and the cartons, will cut just fine with your kid scissors. I'm going to prove it to you by using some kid scissors here. And what might really help though is I'm going to provide your teacher with a utility knife. So the utility knife has a really sharp blade in the front, and what those teachers are going to do for you is just help you get started by giving you a little tiny poke right through your container there. And once you get that poke, then you can get your kid scissors in, and you can poke them in the hole, and then you can go out and around the outside. So usually it works if you are cutting in a counterclockwise direction. See how I'm going kind of like against the direction of the clock? That's called counterclockwise. That means that my scrap piece that I'm cutting out can sort of fold out of the way as I'm making this cut. So left-handed people, you may end up cutting the opposite direction if you have a pair of lefty scissors, but most of us right-handers are going to cut that way. Okay, so there's my hole cut out. Not a big deal. Okay, you might have a little bit longer, a little bit harder of a time cutting it, but that's okay. So just go ahead and cut this hole opening roughly to the size that it needs to be. So it needs to be about the size of this template for birdhouse opening. And if it's a little bit too big or a little bit too small, it's not that big of a deal, as long as this piece still is able to fit inside there. So we're gonna put that piece inside, and we're gonna twist it around a little bit, and then that is going to be our opening. So you can see I just have to hold that in there with my finger right now, but that's the size of the opening that we're looking for. Okay? Now, when you come on the Maker Bus, what we're gonna do is we are going to squirt some really heavy-duty glue on this thing, and we're going to put that around there, and then we're going to try and not get our fingers all too messy, and we're going to stick it in, and then we're going to squeeze it up against the front. And we have to kind of hold it there for a little bit just to make sure that it gets really nice and tight and squishes in, and then after a couple of minutes that should be nice and stiff that we can hold that on there. Now that pretty much is all that we should do to finish up with our birdhouse. But there's a couple other things that you might want to do that probably are going to make the birds pretty happy if you do them. Now what I did was took an additional container, a milk jug gallon in this case, and I actually cut a part out of it. So I just really roughly made some shapes, and I cut another piece of plastic out of this. And I'm going to use that piece of plastic as a little tiny roof to go on top of this. Now, the reason for that is because that when the water comes, you don't want the water to be able to go right inside the whole opening, okay? So if the water comes down, you don't want it to go right inside the hole. So what I'm going to do is help my little bird friends out by making a little tiny roof that just sticks off the front there. This is another reason why the cartons are a really good solution for this. If we did it on the milk jug or on the plastic jug here, you can still do it and still get it done, but it's just a little bit harder, and it's a little bit harder to stick this up here, and it might give you a little bit more problems. Okay, so the cartons are really good, and all I'm going to do to attach this is, again, I'm going to give your teacher a roll of gray tape, and you're just going to pull a piece of gray tape off that's roughly the size that you need it to be there, and we're going to stick it onto your plastic, and we're going to stick it onto the carton, wrap it around the edges a little bit, And that should hold on there for pretty long time. Now I don't think that this is going to last for like a whole bunch of years, but I think that this will last pretty long, at least for a season or two. And so, you know, you're trying to help a habitat for the birds. You're trying to bring wildlife onto your property, which is always a good thing. So that's basically the end of the building part for your little birdhouse there. But there's maybe one more thing that would help to make this a whole lot better of a project, and that is we need some way to hang this so that we can put it up in a tree, or so that we can tie it to a post or something like that. And I have one solution that will help probably everybody. We can hang it on a tree or hang it on a fence post or something like that. We're going to take the cap that's either in the top of your jug or the top of this container. We're going to take that cap, and I made my own machine over here to help punch some holes in this. So if I take a look to the camera here, this is nice and flat and plain right there. I'm going to put it in my little machine right here, and this has two really sharp points in it, and all I have to do is just line it up a little bit and then gently push down, and it pokes right through that cap and makes two nice little holes in there. I don't know if you can see that or not, but there's two little holes in there. And I'm going to give you, every kid is going to get a length of like a twisty tie. It's like a really long twisty tie. And those holes are the perfect size to just squeeze your twisty tie right through there on both sides. And then you are going to take these and give them a little twist on the inside. I found that you do need to twist them up pretty good, because if you make it a little too heavy or don't twist them up enough, they can come undone. So give them a whole bunch of twists and then pull them back towards the top. And before you know it, stick that back in there, and then you put that on, and then you have a nice little hanging birdhouse. Okay, so there you go. Nice little hanging birdhouse, extra habitats for birds, which is always welcome and always great. And there were a couple of tools that I used to help me make this process, other than just some scissors and stuff, but specifically these front faces. I programmed these on the computer, and then I used a special tool called the laser cutter to cut these out. So I wanted to just show you that over here really quick. So this is the laser cutter. Lasers, cool, right? The way that this machine works is not really that complicated. If you imagine the light bulb in your room, the lights around your house, when you walk into the room and flip the light on, the light from those light bulbs goes everywhere. It's supposed to shine in all the different corners of your house so that it lights up the place. Well, the way that this machine works is similar, but a little bit in the opposite direction. Back in the back of this, there's what's called a laser tube, and that emits a laser light. And instead of that light being allowed to shine and go everywhere, it actually concentrates it down and squeezes it into a really tiny area that's really about the size of the head of a pin. And it bounces it off of a couple of mirrors and then points it straight down at whatever you want to cut through. Now, in this case, this laser can cut through pretty much anything that burns. If it's wood, plastic, cardboard, other types of materials, this thing can probably cut through it. But it's not super powerful, and it can only cut through things that are relatively thin. So what I did was I programmed this machine to cut through thin pieces of wood, plywood, and it's supposed to cut the exact size opening for the birds that we are trying to attract. And it also cuts the outside shape, and it also writes the name of the kind of bird that we're trying to attract on the front here. And so basically what happens is that, again, the machine concentrates that light energy down and then points it straight down like you're seeing on the screen right now. So that's pretty much all I wanted to talk to you about today. And I can't wait until I get to see your class and you get to come out to the Maker Bus and start working with me with these different tools and things that are on the bus. When you see me, you're going to have your hole cut in your container, and you're going to bring the container out here, and we are going to attach the bird hole opening to it, and then we're also going to punch the holes in the lid so that we can stick the big twisty tie down through there, and then you'll walk back to your classroom with all of that stuff. And then at a slightly later time, whether it's at that same time during the class period or maybe a little bit later, your teacher might give you a little bit more time to work on things like putting a roof on it and maybe decorating it a little bit. And maybe a little bit later after that, maybe some paint could go on top of the thing. So I can't wait until you get to come out to the bus and see all these cool machines for yourself. So until then, see you later.